Tyrell Webster was convicted of killing a man in East Price Hill, and as the victim's family asked for justice today, Webster was laughing at them.
While most convicts maintain a good attitude during court proceedings in hopes of leniency from the judge and jury, there are those who defy expectations, laughing so audaciously that they seem to mock the notion of justice.
I'm sorry.
But rest assured, these terrible people eventually get a taste of their own medicine. Here are 10 convicts who laughed at their victims in court. Number 1. Michael Madison. Michael Madison, born on October 15, 1977, is a convicted serial criminal who took the lives of his victims during a 9-month spree that began in 2012 and continued well into 2013. Michael Madison's tale grabbed the attention of news outlets after the horrible truth was discovered. The authorities were notified of a noxious odor emerging from a garage leased by Madison on July 19, 2013. As they began their research, their greatest nightmares came true in front of their eyes. A body was hidden within the confines of the garage. Law enforcement agents moved onward with grim persistence, uncovering 2 more bodies the next day. Each body was found in a different place. One was found in a backyard, and the other was in the depths of an abandoned house. As the inquiry continued, an evil image of Michael Madison emerged. Sherelda Terry, Shatisha Sheely, and Angela Deskins were revealed to have fallen victim to his evil desires. However, the road to justice was not without challenges. Madison was caught without violence after a brief confrontation with the police at his mother's residence. The court was set for a trial that would reveal the extent of the wicked actions he inflicted on his innocent victims. The courtroom became a battleground on April 4, 2016, where Madison's destiny would be decided. The trial began, and the horrible facts of his actions were made public for all to see. The jury, faced with the arduous burden of administering justice, deliberated for less than a day before issuing a thundering guilty verdict on all 13 charges. Throughout the trial, a frightening aspect of Madison's personality emerged, a terrifying tendency for giggling. His bold grins and contemptuous demeanor put a gloomy fog over the courtroom, as though he relished the pain he had inflicted. When Madison smiled at the victim's father during his address to the court, the father grew enraged and leaped at him. Madison was hauled away, yet he still smiled at the victim's father. The father was released without charges, but it demonstrated 2 things: the father's rage and Madison's lack of remorse. Following their observation of Madison's unrepentant demeanor, the jury recommended that he didn't deserve to live on May 20, 2016. The final chapter of Michael Madison's trial concluded with that, leaving a community reeling from the great loss inflicted upon them. Number 2. Luis Bracamontes. Luis Enrique Monroy. Bracamontes is from Mexico and has a moniker that sends shivers down the spines of those familiar with his exploits. This criminal set out on a violent spree that shocked Northern California to its core. The peace of the Sacramento metropolitan region was shattered on October 24, 2014, when Bracamontes opened fire on 3 sheriff's deputies, forever affecting the lives of everyone involved in the confrontation. Bracamontes, in a blatant display of callousness, took the lives of 2 brave police officers and injured a 3rd. Tragically, a civilian was also caught in the crossfire and sustained injuries as a result of the terrible act of violence. The brutal crime was heightened by the fact that Bracamontes, a convicted narcotics dealer, was living in the United States illegally, fueling the raging debate over immigration rules. Bracamontes was an illegal immigrant, and his criminal background revealed a worrying habit of lawlessness. His existence in the United States challenged his legitimacy, as he had been deported twice previously. The first deportation came in 1997, following his conviction in Arizona on illegal substance possession and sale charges. Bracamontes, on the other hand, seemed unfazed while he was arrested on narcotics charges in Phoenix again in 1998. Surprisingly, he was freed under odd circumstances by former Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio, raising serious doubts. Bracamontes was arrested and sent back to Mexico again in 2001, continuing the cycle. But he had other plans, and eventually he reappeared. He went on a horrific spree of violence, accompanied by a female accomplice, that eternally soiled the streets of Sacramento. After an exhaustive search, Bracamontes was finally arrested and brought before the court. He maintained a really poor attitude in court. The arrogant criminal continued smiling and laughing and accepted responsibility for the crime with no remorse. After that, he began cursing and said that if he was released, he would do it again. After viewing his demeanor, the court handed down a sentence that cost him his life. Despite facing the penalty, Bracamontes provided little assistance to the public defenders attempting to save his life, instead shouting profanities and threats at lawyers, judges, and witnesses throughout his court hearings. Sheriff Scott Jones, who attended the March sentencing hearing, said that the jury made the correct choice. Number 3. Danta Wright. Danta Wright was accused of taking a man's life while being involved in an armed robbery. He was arrested and brought to court, where he callously laughed at the mourning mother of his victim while she sobbed. It is an inconceivable act of brutality, a blatant contempt for human life and sensitivity. Danta Wright, the accused, sat in the courtroom with a smile on his face, and he couldn't stop laughing. This cruel performance coincided with the victim's mother's heartbreaking sobbing since she had lost her kid to Wright's wicked deed. Her pain was very clear as she described the emptiness created by her son's disappearance and the broken expectations of a future they would never share. Wright exhibited no remorse as he boldly addressed the court. Instead, he said coldly that he would be home shortly, saying the words with indifference. His lack of empathy or guilt was obvious to everyone there, serving as a sobering reminder of the evil that can exist inside some people. The judge, visibly enraged and perplexed, turned his gaze to Wright, emphasizing the astonishment of his nonchalant demeanor. He addressed the defendant, his voice brimming with wrath, saying how Wright's smugness and laughter made the issue seem less serious. The judge exhibited a strong desire to reject the agreed-upon penalty and go to trial. During his sentence, a shocking incident occurred in which the felon was captured on video beaming as if the seriousness of his misdeeds didn't matter. The judge, frustrated with this casual attitude, decided to make an unexpected and drastic move. In the midst of such heinous behavior, the judge delivered a remarkable statement. He proclaimed that if a jury found Wright guilty of a crime, he would be sentenced to spend all of his life behind bars, where he would finally pass away. It was a striking message, a clear position against the defendant's callousness and lack of sorrow. This was not the first time Wright had surprised the courtroom. He readily acknowledged attacking Jordan Clee, 18, during a prior pre-trial hearing. Wright stated how he and two buddies attempted to rob Clee, eventually taking his life even though they didn't have to. Clee, a bright student and football player, had his future taken from him, leaving his family to deal with the heartbreak. However, justice was done when Wright was sentenced to 23 to 50 years in jail for armed robbery and for taking the life of Jordan. Number 4. Tyrell Webster. Webster, 28, became caught in a horrific spiral of violence and tragedy. He committed a cold-blooded act in April 2012 when he assaulted 47-year-old Grover Cleveland Watson, Jr. on Osage Avenue in East Price Hill using a firearm and took his life. The Southwest Ohio Fugitive Apprehension Strike Team acted quickly, apprehending Webster on the same day the crime was committed. The law enforcement agencies involved were adamant about bringing him to justice and exposing the horrific facts of the crime that had occurred on that fatal day. However, the journey to justice was fraught with stumbling blocks and unexpected turns. Webster's legal path was hampered by the unexpected resignation of his first defense attorneys, who resigned before his first trial began. The first trial resulted in a mistrial, leaving the matter unresolved because the prosecution neglected to provide the defense with critical evidence. Faced with an unknown future, Webster requested a mistrial only to have his plea dismissed. An unusual discovery came from the depths of Webster's defense during the proceedings. According to court documents, Webster claimed that his girlfriend was the one who pulled the trigger and shot, taking the life of Grover Cleveland Watson, Jr. This new information complicated an already puzzling case, leaving both the court and the public wrestling with the truth among competing narratives. However, as the court proceeding went on, it became clear that Tyrell was guilty and had no regrets about his crime. The victim's sister, who is blind, was shown where the criminal stood as she wanted to give a speech on how she felt. As soon as the victim's sister started to speak, the culprit began to smile and chuckle. And when the judge confronted him, he told the judge that it didn't matter. The victim's sister stated she wanted to forgive him. But when she realized he had no remorse, she decided he should be locked up for the rest of his life. The court informed the victim's sister that Tyrell was running, to which she said, "I don't care anymore." Justice served as the judge sentenced Tyrell to a well-deserved 18 years in jail. Number 5. Isabel Martinez. A mother from Gwinnett County had alarmed and perplexed her family members by making a worrisome pledge to an evil force. She stated that she had promised her children to this terrible spirit in order to bring her recently departed father back to life. What happened next was a heinous crime that rocked the town to its core. The facts of the 2017 crime shed light on the horrifying sequence of events, according to a newly released investigator's report. The mother in issue, Isabel Martinez, allegedly took the lives of her husband and 5 children, leaving only one alive. According to the article, Martinez's husband, Martin Romero, awoke during the attack and begged her, "Please don't do this." Martinez was hailed as a dedicated mother by family members. The investigators' findings, on the other hand, provide a worrying picture of her mental state in the aftermath of her father's death in June 2017. Concerns about her health have grown among those close to her. Griselda Romero, one of Martin Romero's relatives, told investigators that she heard Martinez declare her determination to bring her father back by any means possible, and that she was impatiently awaiting a signal to carry out his request. Surprisingly, she had formed a bargain with an evil force and pledged to it her own children. Martinez had spoken of offering her children to God in exchange for her father's return, according to Johanna Buccio, another niece of Martin Romero. Another niece, Edith Romero, told detectives that Martinez had chillingly stated her plans to put to sleep everyone in the house just 4 days before the fatal crime. Martin Romero had taken Martinez to a doctor who prescribed antidepressants in an attempt to treat Martinez's worsening mental state. He personally administered her medication because he was afraid she might overdose. During a later police search, authorities uncovered a medicine often used to treat major depression. Martinez's unusual behavior in court brought the matter to national attention. She grinned, raised her thumb, and made exaggerated prayer-like movements. She even claimed to have felt a devil-like spirit during a family vacation to Savannah just before the heinous crime. The judge warned about her actions, but to no avail. She is currently held at an undisclosed mental health facility. Officials there will determine if she is ever fit to enter the general prison population. Number 6. T.J. Lane. T.J. Lane, whose full name is Thomas T.J. Michael Lane III, rose to prominence following a horrible school shooting incident that horrified the nation. Lane's name will be eternally connected with the horrible events that occurred on February 27, 2012, at Chardon High School in Chardon, Ohio. Lane, armed with an .22 caliber pistol, stormed the school cafeteria at breakfast and unleashed a wave of violence that would impact the lives of countless others. He was the man who took the lives of 3 kids and injured 3 others in the heinous act of aggression. The victims, Daniel Parmator, Demetrius Hewlin, and Russell King Jr., were the 3 young men whose lives were cut short. Lane's motivation for his conduct is still a matter of discussion and dispute. Personal grievances or deep-seated anger are suggested as potential triggers, according to some reports, while others emphasize the presence of underlying mental health concerns. Lane's rocky past complicates matters even further. He had a long history of behavioral issues and suffered severe difficulties in his home life. These circumstances complicated the investigation of his activities and the quest for solutions. Lane was captured after the incident by a brave teacher who managed to control him until the cops came. He was then charged with various offenses stemming from the fatal occurrence. Lane displayed a disturbing lack of remorse throughout his trial, even laughing and making obscene gestures in court. He donned a t-shirt with a term that explained his crime and boldly made indecent comments at the victims' families in a terrifying show. Lane was found guilty of his crimes in March 2013 and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of release. The judge presiding over the case described his conduct as pure evil and emphasized the need to safeguard society from such a violent man. Lane's sentence was designed to ensure that he would never have the opportunity to cause harm to people again. Lane's actions had far-reaching consequences for the victims' families and the Chardon community. They were eternally transformed, left to deal with overwhelming grief, anguish, and an unending feeling of loss. The Chardon High School massacre sent shockwaves across the country, sparking debates about gun control, school safety measures, and young people's mental health. The terrible tragedy caused communities to consider the necessity of recognizing and responding to symptoms of distress in problematic kids. Number 7. Joseph McEnroe. Joseph McEnroe's name became linked with a horrible act that rocked the town he lived in. To comprehend the gravity of his conduct, one must first investigate his past and the events preceding his crime. Joseph McEnroe was born on December 8, 1979, in a typical suburban neighborhood. Little is known about his childhood, however, it is assumed that he had a rather ordinary upbringing. However, a dark and unsettling aspect was eventually revealed underneath the unassuming persona. McEnroe committed a heinous crime in April 2012 that would permanently mar his reputation. McEnroe took the lives of 6 people using a firearm in the 3,400 block of Osage Avenue in East Price Hill on that awful day. The details of the crime sent chills up everyone's spine. McEnroe's actions were planned and executed with a terrifying disregard for human life. The motivation for this heinous deed is unknown. Some believe it was motivated by deep-seated personal grievances, while others suspect mental illness. Following the crime, law enforcement agencies swiftly moved to bring McEnroe to justice. He was apprehended by authorities shortly after the incident, as investigators diligently worked to piece together the events that happened on that tragic day. The courtroom became the setting for the conclusion of McEnroe's judicial procedures. His behavior during the court hearings, however, made a lasting impact on those in attendance. Rather than expressing regret or seriousness, McEnroe stunned witnesses by adopting a harsh and rude demeanor. According to courtroom reports, McEnroe inappropriately laughed, demonstrating a complete lack of concern for the lives he had taken. His laughter echoed throughout the room, inflicting misery on the victims' relatives who were in attendance, seeking justice for their loved ones. This brazen and disrespectful behavior only served to further highlight the cold-heartedness that seemed to consume McEnroe. His actions painted a disturbing picture of an individual disconnected from the gravity of his crimes, unable or unwilling to comprehend the pain and devastation he had inflicted upon others. Despite McEnroe's unsettling display of apathy, the judicial procedure proceeded with the goal of holding him accountable for his crimes. McEnroe was found guilty of the horrible acts he had committed after a comprehensive analysis of the evidence. The sentencing phase followed, with prosecutors attempting to ensure that justice was done. Recognizing the enormity of McEnroe's offenses, the court imposed a term commensurate with the gravity of his deeds. He was condemned to life in prison, guaranteeing that he would be denied the freedom that he had so callously denied to his victims. Number 8. Lori Vallow. Lori Vallow, born Lori Noreen Cox, is a well-known American mother who was involved in the abduction of her 2 children, Joshua Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Lori, who was born on June 26, 1973, had a reasonably typical upbringing until the circumstances surrounding her children's abduction transpired. Lori's crime hinges on her children's strange disappearance. The girl named Tylee Ryan was last seen on September 8, 2019, in Yellowstone National Park, while Joshua J.J. Vallow, who had autism, was last seen on September 23, 2019, in Rexburg, Idaho. The case gained national attention and sparked worries about the safety and well-being of the youngsters. Lori Vallow's behavior following the loss of her children sparked suspicion. Authorities determined that she and her new husband, Chad Daybell, had fled Idaho and moved to Hawaii, where they had resided for many months. Lori refused to cooperate with the police throughout this period and refused to offer any information about the location of her children. Lori Vallow was ultimately arrested in January 2020 in Kauai, Hawaii, on a variety of charges, including desertion and not supporting dependent children, resisting or obstructing officials, criminal solicitation to commit a crime, and contempt of court. She was later extradited to Idaho to face the accusations she faced. Lori Vallow's behavior in court received a lot of attention during the judicial procedures. According to reports, she exhibited little concern for the severity of the allegations against her and no regret for the loss of her children. She was seen smiling and joking during court hearings in several cases, raising more concerns about her mental health and emotional connection to the matter. Given the severity of the situation, Lori Vallow's laughter in court was viewed as very unsettling and disrespectful by many. It indicated a lack of empathy and care for her missing children's well-being. The laughter and general demeanor portrayed in court contributed to the public's idea that she was not taking the matter seriously, increasing conjecture about her role and motivation in Joshua and Tylee's abduction. Police charged her with 2 felonies, abandonment and failure to sustain dependent children. She was also charged with refusing or obstructing authorities, criminal solicitation to commit a crime, contempt of court, and deliberate disobedience of court process or order. The bail is set at $5 million. According to the prosecutor's office, each offense carries a maximum jail term of 14 years. Number 9. Simeon Adams. Simeon Adams, a 16-year-old boy, was the focus of a high-profile crime. His alleged crime and subsequent arrest attracted the media and the interest of the general public. Adams was accused of taking part in a 2-week crime spree that took the life of Nathan Trapuzzano. Police believe Adams shoved Travisano, a 24-year-old and expectant father, into an Indianapolis strip club parking lot. It was then that Adams allegedly assaulted Trapuzzano using a firearm. The exact reason for the attack is not known. Trapuzzano was a computer programmer at Ivy Tech Community College with degrees in Latin and Greek. He and his wife, Jennifer, had been married for about a year and were expecting their first child. However, this was not his only crime. 2 days before taking Nathan's life, he was involved in another incident that took the life of another man named Eric. When the court proceedings began, Adams' actions drew a lot of attention. Reporters and witnesses were taken aback when he appeared in court, looking unconcerned by the gravity of the claims. Instead of expressing sorrow or solemnity, Adams was seen laughing and even joking, raising concerns about his understanding of the consequences he was about to face. The media depiction of Adams's demeanor in court created controversy and raised questions about his understanding of the weight of the allegations against him. Observers, including journalists, noted that the young defendant appeared to be unaware of the grief and suffering he is accused of creating. They expressed shock and frustration, emphasizing that Adams might face life in jail and that he should not take the issue lightly. Adams's case was moved to adult court, which carries harsher punishment. He was already serving a 55-year term for the 2014 crime that took Nathan Trapuzzano's life, but Marion Superior Court Judge Sheila Carlisle sentenced Simeon Adams to an additional 12 years in jail for taking Eric's life. He was accused of aggravated violence and illegally carrying a weapon. Jennifer, the victim's wife, testified from the stand, claiming she had a Nathan-sized hole in her life and that the two were truly soulmates. She stated that her kid calls out Dada when she sees Nathan's picture. Jennifer went on to add that, as a result of Adams' action, she now suffers from anxiety, sleeplessness, and panic attacks, and is afraid to leave the house. She ended her testimony on the witness stand by telling Adams, "I forgive you, Simeon. I forgive you now because that's the sort of man Nathan was." Number 10. Nicholas Jacob Cruz. Nicholas Cruz was born in Margate, Florida in September 1998. He came from a difficult family and faced a number of emotional and behavioral challenges throughout his childhood. Cruz perpetrated a horrific crime that left the entire country shocked on February 14, 2018. He went to a high school in Parkland, Florida, armed with an AR-15-style gun where he had previously studied. Cruz began firing indiscriminately at students and educators, taking the lives of 17 individuals and injuring many more. This heinous act of violence went down in history as one of the bloodiest school shootings in the United States. Cruz left the site after the incident, but was subsequently captured by police. He was later caught and accused of many charges. The unfortunate incident triggered a national discussion about gun control, school safety, and mental health concerns. Nicolas Cruz demonstrated a variety of behaviors that gained notice and controversy throughout his court appearances. He displayed no emotion and looked unconcerned with the gravity of his conduct. However, there was a time when he did show emotion, and that was laughing. His defense counsel smiled at Cruz, who laughed back, causing more controversy. The victims' families and attorneys expressed their displeasure to the judge. This smile sparked indignation and shock among the victims' relatives, the general public, and the media. Cruz's case emphasized the difficulties of mental health and its relationship to violent behavior. He had a history of behavioral issues, including expulsion from school, episodes of harming himself and others, and previous referrals to law enforcement about his troubling behavior. The event prompted concerns about the effectiveness of mental health support and intervention systems in detecting and responding to possible threats. Nicolas Cruz's defense team offered a guilty plea in exchange for a life sentence in March 2019. After an emotional two-day hearing in which family members of the victims met him in court, the criminal who took the life of 17 people at a high school in 2018 was sentenced to life in prison.